Most people think of hospitals as places where lives are saved, where pain is managed, where hope clings to fluorescent lit hallways and late-night coffee runs. But the truth is, under those buzzing ceiling lights and sterile white walls, there's a darkness that doesn't always come from death. Sometimes it seeps out of the people who are supposed to be helping. It was just past 10 p.m. when Olivia clocked in. Third night in a row, the hospital always felt different after sunset. Quieter, colder, like it was holding its breath. She had worked the night shift at St. Elor General for nearly 5 years, and she'd gotten used to the strange quiet that settled in once visiting hours ended. But there was something about that night that felt different, not in a loud or obvious way, more like a draft you didn't notice at first until it brushed the back of your neck. St. Elora was one of those older hospitals, half modernized, half forgotten. Half the building had been renovated, new machines, touch screens, bright LED lights in the ICU. But the other half, well, that part didn't get tours. Faded floor tiles, buzzing old intercoms, and stairwells that smelled like old rain and bleach. Olivia's station was in the older wing, just down from the psych ward and one floor above the long-term care unit. She didn't mind. Less traffic, fewer questions. But that also meant more time to think. And lately, thinking had started to feel dangerous. Her partner that night was Marcus, a travel nurse on his second week there. Young, polite, maybe a little too quiet. He always seemed to be watching more than talking. Not in a creepy way, at least not obviously, but Olivia had picked up on little things, like how he never asked questions about patients, or how he always seemed to know which rooms would be empty without checking the board. "You get used to the silence," Olivia said, trying to make small talk as they started rounds. Marcus smiled faintly. "I don't mind it. Silence tells you more than people think." That was an odd thing to say. Olivia paused, watching him for a second before moving on. She chalked it up to night shift weirdness. People always said strange things at 2 a.m. The rest of the team was small. Liza, the night shift supervisor, had worked there longer than anyone. She was sharp, efficient, and somehow always awake, like she ran on battery acid and sheer spite. Most people respected her. Some feared her. Olivia didn't trust her. She couldn't say why, just something in her eyes, like she was always doing math in her head, measuring people, calculating risks. And then there was Derek, one of the orderlies. Big guy, dry sense of humor, always humming some old rock song under his breath. Everyone liked Derek. That's probably why no one noticed the little changes in him lately. Missed meds, wrong chart updates, late responses to calls. He always had an excuse. The night began like any other, but a little after 11, something strange happened. Room 409 lit up on the board, but Olivia blinked, confused. There was no room 409. Not anymore. That section had been sealed off months ago after a burst pipe flooded part of the floor. It was supposed to be under maintenance, locked, dark, unstaffed. She frowned and tapped the screen again. Still there. Room 409. Heart monitor active. Vitals irregular. Did they reopen the wing? She asked more to herself than anyone. Marcus leaned over, eyes scanning the screen. Thought it was shut down? "It is," Olivia said slowly, backing away. "It should be." She picked up the hallway phone and dialed the floor maintenance line. No answer. She tried Liza's office. Voicemail. Then the intercom crackled to life. Static. Then a voice, too faint to make out at first. "Assistance, room 409. Urgent." She froze. That voice, it sounded familiar, like someone she hadn't heard in a long time. Marcus turned to her. "Should we check it out?" She hesitated. "It's probably just a glitch. That whole section's offline." But Marcus was already walking toward the door. "Just a quick look. Won't take long." Olivia followed, more out of a need to not be alone than any sense of duty. Something in her gut was screaming, but she ignored it. She had done that before, pushed past instincts and paid for it. But this felt different. This felt personal. As they moved down the hallway, the lights above them began to flicker. Not all at once, just here and there, like the building itself was trying to decide whether or not to show them the way. Halfway there, Derek stepped out from a side hallway. No flashlight, no cart, just standing, still, like he was waiting. "You two looking for something?" he asked. His tone was light, but his eyes were hard. "Got a call from 409, Marcus said, voice steady. Derek tilted his head. "That room's closed." "I know," Olivia replied. "That's why we're checking." He nodded slowly, then stepped aside. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that Derek knew more than he was saying, and behind her, she could hear his footsteps, not following exactly, but not fading either. They reached the sealed wing. The door was supposed to be locked with a keycard, but it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the hallway was dark, except for one flickering light, right above the old room 409. And as they approached, Olivia felt something shift in the air, like the building had been waiting for them. The door to room 409 groaned as Marcus pushed it open. The hinges shrieked like something hadn't moved in months, but the light inside was on. The room looked like any other hospital room. Bed, monitors, IV stand, but it was clean. Too clean. The sheets were freshly tucked. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic. A soft beeping came from the heart monitor beside the bed, where a patient lay under a blanket, motionless. Wires ran from the machine to her chest. Olivia stepped closer. Her heart skipped. She knew this woman, Samantha Wells, a psych patient from 6 months ago. Olivia remembered her clearly, paranoid, unstable, terrified of shadows. She'd screamed about voices in the vents and begged not to be left alone at night. She had disappeared one night during a routine transfer. They said she'd escaped, maybe even jumped, but no body was ever found. That was the story. That was what everyone told each other. And now, here she was, alive, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. "How is this possible?" Olivia whispered. Marcus didn't answer. He was already staring at the monitor, frowning. "Vitals are real. She's alive," he said softly. "But her file says she was discharged. No location. Just terminated." Olivia turned away, shaken. The heart monitor beeped steadily, and each tone felt louder than the last. Then the room phone rang. They both jumped. Olivia reached for it, hand shaking. The receiver felt ice cold. She answered it without saying a word. Static. Then, "You weren't supposed to come back here." A click. Silence. She hung up, backing away. Marcus was staring at her. "Who was it?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. The hallway behind them was empty when they stepped out. Derek was gone. So was the light above the door. They walked back in silence, but it wasn't the calm kind. It was thick, heavy, buzzing with the weight of what they'd seen, and Olivia couldn't stop thinking about Samantha. Her pale skin, the way her fingers twitched under the blanket. Back at the nurse's station, Olivia opened the file system and searched for Samantha's name. Nothing. No record. Not even in archived patient logs. Like she had never existed. Marcus said nothing for a while, then, "Liza's involved, isn't she?" Olivia glanced at him. "What? You recognize that woman? You knew her. So did Liza, I bet. And now she's buried in a wing no one's supposed to enter." He leaned forward. "You don't find that strange?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I do." He looked like he wanted to say more, but the computer beeped. New message. It was from Derek. "You need to talk to me. Alone. Service stairwell. 1:30. Don't bring him." She turned to Marcus. "I need to check something downstairs." "I'll come." "No," she said too quickly. "It's nothing. Just need to talk to facilities." He didn't believe her, but he nodded anyway. As she walked down to the stairwell, her mind ran wild. Derek had been acting strange lately, but what if he wasn't the problem? What if he was trying to warn her? The stairwell was dark, the only light a thin strip from the hallway outside. Derek stood at the base, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "You went in there," he said. "I did. You weren't supposed to." "Then tell me what the hell is going on." Derek looked up the stairwell, made sure they were alone. Then he leaned in. "She never escaped, Olivia. Samantha. They said she got out, but she didn't. She was sedated and sent downstairs." "Downstairs? But she's up now, yeah. But she was in sub-level storage for months. They kept her there. Said she was dangerous, said she knew things. What things? I don't know. She talked in her sleep, names, numbers, mentioned doctors who weren't on her case. And then, one night, she vanished. Just gone. Then a few days later, Liza started acting weird, like she was nervous, like she was being watched. You think Liza moved her? I think Liza's doing a lot of things no one knows about. There was something else in Derek's eyes. Fear. Why are you telling me this now? Olivia asked. Because someone's deleting records. I checked the logs. Samantha's not the only one. 3 other patients. Gone. No notes. No signatures. Just wiped. And you were close to one of them, weren't you? She flinched. Lena. That name hadn't passed her lips in almost a year. She was the mistake Olivia tried to quiet, too quiet. Olivia had missed a sign, a big one. Lena had been spiraling, and Olivia let it slide. One night, Lena tried to hurt herself and someone else. Olivia caught it just in time, or so she thought. Liza covered for her, said it would ruin her record if the truth got out. Olivia had been grateful then, but now it felt like leverage. They're using patience, Derek said, for something. I don't know what, but it's bad. Olivia stepped back, feeling sick. And Marcus? He's new, right? Derek nodded slowly. New face. But I've seen him before. 2 years ago. Different hospital, different name. That hit her like a punch. She didn't say anything else, just turned and left. Back at the station, Marcus was gone. So was his badge. And the message log was wiped clean. The air felt heavier now, like the building itself was pressing in on her. Later that night, Olivia confronted Lisa. She didn't plan it, just saw her in the hallway and acted. Who is Samantha? Olivia asked flatly. Liza didn't blink. No one. She's alive. In room 409, there is no room 409. I saw her. Liza stepped closer. Her face was calm, but her voice was sharp. You didn't see anything. And if you want to keep your job, your record, your license, you'll remember that. You're threatening me. I'm reminding you. You owe me. I've covered for you more than once. Olivia's stomach twisted. This isn't about me. It's always been about you. You're the reason Lena's gone. That broke something. Olivia reached into her pocket and pulled out the printout she grabbed before the log was wiped. It showed room 409's vitals, time-stamped. She held it up. I'm not the only one with mistakes. Liza snatched it from her hand, shredded it with quick shaking fingers. You think they'll believe you? You think you'll be the one who walks away clean? I'll find Marcus. Liza laughed, low and bitter. Marcus isn't who you think. He's not here to help you. And just like that, she walked away. That night, Olivia didn't go home. She sat in the break room watching the cameras, hoping to see Marcus, hoping he'd return. Instead, she saw something else. At 3:12 a.m., room 409's door opened. Samantha stepped out. Only, she wasn't alone. Behind her, half in shadow, was Marcus, and in his hand was a folder marked confidential. The surveillance footage haunted Olivia. Marcus standing too still in the dim hallway. Samantha, barefoot, pale, expressionless, following a silent cue. And the folder, thick, official, marked with a red tab. He wasn't a nurse. He had never been a nurse. The hospital was quiet in that eerie way it only got after 3 a.m., when even the ghosts seemed to rest. Olivia moved through the halls without thinking, badge forgotten, footsteps echoing in the sterile silence. Her breath came in short bursts as she made her way to the one place she hadn't dared check, the basement archive. Most staff didn't even know it existed. She found the door unmarked, locked with a keypad she'd only ever seen Liza use. And in that moment, her hands moved on their own. Birthdays, office numbers, nothing worked. Then she froze. Lena's intake date, the day everything changed. She typed it in. The lock clicked. The air inside was different. Damp, stale, metallic. The lights were dim, buzzing faintly, casting long shadows against rows of filing cabinets and old servers. This wasn't just for storage. It felt like a graveyard. And in the center of it, Marcus. He didn't look surprised. He held the folder loosely in one hand, flipping through it with casual detachment. When he looked up, his face was unreadable. I was wondering how long it would take you, he said. Olivia stared. You lied. About who you were. About everything. I didn't lie, he said. I just didn't correct you. What is this place? He held up the file. You want to know the truth? Here it is. Samantha, Lena, 4 others, all patients transferred here from Ridgewell Psychiatric. All flagged as high risk but never evaluated. All disappeared. He tossed the folder to the floor. Why? Olivia whispered. Marcus stepped closer. Because people like Liza needed ghosts. Bodies that couldn't talk. Minds so damaged no one would believe them anyway. Perfect for testing. Her mouth went dry. Testing what? He smiled. And it wasn't kind. Behavioral compliance. New drugs. Treatments not cleared by ethics boards. You think this hospital runs on clean hands? She took a step back, sick rising in her throat. And you? What are you? Whistleblower? Maybe. Or maybe just a cleanup man, depending on how tonight goes. You used me. He didn't deny it. Why? She asked, her voice cracking. Why pretend to care? Why follow me around, help me dig? Because people like you dig fast and deep. I didn't need access. I needed you to open the doors. She wanted to scream, hit him, cry, but her body wouldn't move. His eyes. You're just like Liza. Number Lisa does this for control. I do it because it's already too late. And you were always just one signature away from joining them. What are you talking about? He knelt, picked up the folder again, and flipped it open to a document she didn't recognize. Her name, her ID badge number, her signature, consent form for experimental treatment, dated 11 months ago. Her fingers trembled. I never signed that. You did. You just didn't know what it was. Liza slipped it in. You were too grateful to question her. Her knees buckled, and she sat on the cold floor. Everything spun. Lena was the first, Marcus continued. After the incident, she was scheduled for a full review, but Liza knew the board would blame you. So she made a deal. Transfer Lena to the unrecorded wing. No public reports. No fallout. You get to keep your license. She said Lena would be placed in a better care unit. She was placed in a basement cell, drugged, studied, and when she got worse, they let her rot. Until she died. The words hit like a car crash. Olivia gasped for air. I didn't know, she said. But you suspected. She stared at the ground. He was right. She had suspected. The odd gaps in paperwork, the missing files. The look Liza gave her that one time, she asked too many questions. Cool, calm, final. You think this is about a few lost patients, Marcus said. But it's bigger. This hospital isn't the only one. Her voice came out small. Why tell me now? Because you're going to be the next ghost, he said almost sadly. Unless you do exactly what I say. Something behind him shifted. A movement in the dark. Olivia's eyes darted past him and saw her, Samantha, standing in the shadows, awake and alert and watching. Marcus didn't notice. She remembers everything, Olivia said softly. Marcus turned. Samantha didn't speak. She just walked forward slowly, like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. She reached for Marcus's hand, the one holding the folder, and without warning, she stabbed him. The scalpel came from nowhere. Flash of silver. Marcus stumbled back, gasping, eyes wide. Blood bloomed across his shirt. He collapsed to the floor, choking. Samantha looked at Olivia, calm, clear-eyed. He said you'd stop looking, she said. But you didn't. I'm sorry, Olivia whispered, meaning it more than she ever had. Samantha handed her the folder. Take it, she said, before they find us. Olivia's hands shook as she clutched the blood-speckled file. Names, notes, receipts. It was all there. Everything. Marcus coughed on the ground, still alive but fading fast. You don't know what they'll do to you, he said through gritted teeth. I don't care anymore. Samantha looked down at him, expression flat. I remember every needle, she said, and then she turned and disappeared down the corridor. Sirens started echoing from above. Security. Olivia ran, not to escape, but to expose everything. The door slammed behind her as she emerged into the night, clutching the folder like it was her last breath. The cold wind slapped her face, the parking lot still and lifeless. But her mind was fire, because the truth was out now, and there was no going back. The folder was everything. Olivia handed it off in the rain. A gas station on Route 17. A flash drive inside a coffee cup. A phone call to a reporter she'd once helped treat after a car crash. She didn't give her name. She didn't need to. By the next morning, the story broke. Unregistered psychiatric wing. Missing patients. Experimentation allegations. She watched the headlines unfold from a cheap motel room, 2 counties over, wrapped in a blanket that didn't belong to her, staring at a screen that blurred with tears. She should have felt relieved. She should have felt something close to justice. But there was no justice. Only aftermath. Marcus's body was found by security, still breathing barely. He was transferred to a private facility under heavy guard. Officially, he was a disgruntled contractor, caught trying to destroy sensitive medical documents. No one questioned the details. The hospital's PR team worked overtime. Liza vanished. No press statement, no interviews, no investigation. The board quietly listed her as on leave for personal reasons. Olivia knew what that meant. She was protected by money, by silence, by the same people who buried everything else. And Samantha? Gone. No trace, no discharge records, no witness reports. It was like she'd never existed. Olivia filed a missing person report under an alias. Nothing came back. Part of her wondered if Samantha had ever truly been free, or if the hospital had gotten to her before she could make it out. The silence was louder than the noise had ever been. Leaked to multiple outlets. Lawsuits followed. The hospital issued a generic apology but took no responsibility. Internal investigations, policy changes, a new administrator. Words that sounded good but meant nothing. And Olivia? She couldn't go back. Not to the hospital, not to her apartment, not to her life. Her nursing license was under review, not for what happened to Lena, but for violating confidentiality, trespassing, and distributing classified materials. She was advised to remain cooperative and quiet if she wanted a chance at keeping her career. The irony was sickening. She took a job under the table in a free clinic 2 states away, patching up people no one else wanted to deal with. No questions, no paperwork, just faces, pain, and the kind of work that didn't come with white coats or press releases. Some nights, she still saw Lena, not the screaming, sedated version, but the one from before, the girl with the nervous smile and the shaky hands, the one who called Olivia safe, the one who Olivia swore she'd protect. She broke that promise again and again, and it gnawed at her piece by piece. The betrayal wasn't just what Liza did. It was what Olivia let happen. By trusting the system, by staying quiet when she first noticed something off, by looking the other way because it was easier than digging. She didn't just lose her job or her peace. She lost the version of herself that believed she was one of the good ones. One day, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photograph. A girl on a bench in a crowded city, feeding pigeons. Head down, hoodie up, Samantha. On the back, a single word was written in blocky handwriting. Free. Olivia stared at it for a long time and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of something quieter, something closer to peace. The system still stood, but one ghost got out. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something. The folder lived online now. Scanned, uploaded, downloaded, picked apart by people who would never understand the smell of antiseptic sweat or the way a scream sounds in an empty hospital corridor. It became a symbol of corruption, of malpractice, of institutional failure. A few people lost their jobs. A few more gave public statements dripping with half-measured remorse. A committee was formed. Changes were promised, but no one talked about the 4th floor. Not really. That wing stayed sealed. Renovations began. New paint, new lights. Turn it into a research space, they said. Make it useful again. Erase what happened there. And in a way it worked. Hospitals don't die. They mutate, change names, rebrand. But Olivia knew the truth wasn't in the policies or the headlines. It was in the cracks between rooms, in the stories no one wanted to believe. She stayed away from the city. Too many ghosts. Too many chances of running into people who'd once called her one of the good ones. She worked quietly, behind the scenes, helping abuse survivors navigate the very systems she once believed in. Sometimes she slept, mostly she didn't. Guilt had a rhythm to it. It hummed just beneath the surface like electricity behind walls. She never spoke to Samantha again. Sometimes she wondered if the photo was real. Maybe it had been a message, or a warning, or a goodbye. But she kept it, folded into the lining of her wallet, the ink starting to fade. Free. What did that even mean? Freedom wasn't just walking away. It was living with what you'd done, and what you hadn't done. Marcus survived his wounds. He disappeared not long after being transferred. No charges, no press. A ghost in a different way. Olivia assumed he was back to doing what he always did. Watching, waiting, choosing sides only when it served him. He was never a villain, but he was never innocent either. Just like her. That was the hardest part. The realization that no one wears a name tag that says bad guy. That betrayal doesn't always come from malice. It comes from silence, from apathy, from fear, and it doesn't always explode. Sometimes it seeps. The broader world moved on. The scandal faded like all scandals do. Something newer, louder, came to replace it. But for the patients who vanished, those whose names were scribbled and redacted and filed away like broken inventory, there was no moving on. They were reminders that medicine is not always healing, that trust is not always earned, that systems built to protect can be bent, quietly, invisibly, into something that harms. And that's what Olivia carried most. Not the guilt of what she missed, but the responsibility of what she now knew. She no longer believed in clear lines, not between right and wrong, not between heroes and villains. Everyone had reasons. Everyone had a mask. And sometimes, the most dangerous people were the ones who truly believed they were saving you. The fourth floor didn't exist. That was what they said. But it did. Every hospital has one. It always had. Not a hallway or a room, but a space where ethics slip, where compassion bends, where people become numbers, where help turns into harm, where no one wants to look too closely. That's what this story is really about. Not about a nurse, or a patient, or a shadowed man with a fake badge, but about what happens when we stop asking questions, when we trust too easily, when we're too tired or too scared or too desperate to look behind the curtain. Because the truth, the real betrayal, it doesn't start with one lie. It starts when everyone agrees not to notice. And maybe the only thing worse than the fourth floor is how easy it is to pretend it was never there to begin with. It was the kind of hospital that felt like it never truly slept. Bright fluorescent lights washed everything in sterile white. The hum of machines buzzing through empty halls, like background noise in a dream you can't wake up from. The night shift, especially on the psych floor, carried its own kind of silence, one that didn't soothe but watched. Derek had only been working the third shift for 3 weeks, a float nurse with a calm demeanor and a spotless record. He was the kind of person managers liked. No drama, no complaints. He transferred from a quieter facility upstate after a personal incident he never talked about. Nobody asked. Nobody pried. The psych unit was technically locked down after midnight. No visitors, no external calls. Just staff and patients and cameras that recorded everything but answered nothing. Most nights blurred together. Med rounds, restraint checks, wandering patients who forgot where they were or who they were. Derek was used to it. He'd seen worse. The other night staff were an odd mix. Marcy, the lead nurse, was in her mid-50s and had been working the floor longer than most doctors had been alive. She was sharp but tired, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. There was AJ, a CNA, who always had earbuds in and pretended not to hear things. And Tom, the night shift doc, who barely left his office unless someone coded or someone bled. They weren't close, but they functioned like gears in a machine. Until the night, the machine stopped. It was a Friday. Derek remembered that. Rain tapped against the windows and the air smelled like burnt coffee and Lysol. The unit had 14 patients that night, a mix of schizophrenia, severe depression, and involuntary holds. One of them, room 213, was new. A man in his late 30s, no name given, came in under a John Doe order. Paranoid, mute, unresponsive to meds. No records, no ID, nothing. He just stared, all night, eyes wide, tracking every movement, but never blinking when you thought he should. Derek didn't like room 213. Something about the silence in there wasn't right. It wasn't calm. It felt strategic, like whoever was behind those eyes was listening harder than he should have been, watching, calculating. And every time Derek checked vitals, the man would smile. Not big, just enough to make your stomach twist. Probably catatonic schizophrenia, Marcy had said. They do that sometimes, like the body's not theirs anymore. But Derek wasn't convinced. The call came at 2:47 a.m. It wasn't a phone call or an intercom page, just a light on the monitor blinking red. Room 213. Derek grabbed the crash cart. AJ trailed behind, half asleep. Marcy met them outside the room with a look that said she'd seen this before. But something was off. No code blue had been announced. No alarm from the room's monitor. No beeping. Just that blinking light, quiet and steady. Inside, the patient was lying still, eyes open, no breath. Derek checked the pulse. Nothing. No heartbeat, he muttered. We should call it. Clock it at 2:48, Marcy said calmly, scribbling something down on her chart. But Derek froze. Wait, we didn't check responsiveness. We don't need to, Marcy interrupted. He stared at her. We have to initiate CPR protocol. This is a code blue. There's no code blue. Derek blinked. What are you talking about? He's unresponsive. She stepped closer and whispered, we don't call codes on this floor. Not unless we want to deal with him again. Who? She looked down at the patient, then back at Derek. Just walk away. He stared at them both. The body, the faint curl of a smile still on its lips. And Marcy, stoic almost, resigned. AJ said nothing, just turned and left. And something inside Derek felt like it had shifted sideways. Because this wasn't just a quiet death on a psych ward. This wasn't just a patient coding. This was something everyone had already decided to forget. Even though it was still breathing, just a second ago. Even though no one ever checked if he was really gone. The room grew colder, and Derek realized that whatever happened here tonight, whatever this was, it wasn't over. The next morning, Derek drove home, first time, with the heater blasting and the windows fogging up, but no amount of warm air could cut through the chill sitting in his chest. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. That wasn't a normal death. That wasn't a normal night. At first, he told himself it was just the shock, the adrenaline, that maybe the psych floor had its own way of doing things, some unspoken protocol for patients who were beyond saving. But that lie didn't stick, because Derek had seen something, not just the body. It was Marcy's face, not fear, not grief, just acceptance, like she'd expected it, like she'd seen it happen before. He waited until his next shift to ask questions. The day staff didn't seem to know or care about what happened in room 213. No incident report was filed, no autopsy request, just a quiet notation in the logbook. PT expired in room 213, no resuscitation. That was it, like the man never existed. By his second week, Derek noticed other odd things. Room 213 stayed empty, not just unoccupied, off limits. Even when the unit was overbooked, even when patients were sleeping in chairs or hallway beds, 213 stayed closed. No reason, no explanation. Marcy avoided it. Tom, the doc, pretended it didn't exist. One night, Derek checked the security monitor. Room 213's feed was missing. Every room had a camera feed labeled and time-stamped. But 213? Nothing. Not even a black screen. Like the system just skipped it entirely. He started asking quiet questions. To AJ, who shrugged. I don't know, man. I don't mess with that room. Not my business. To Tom, who snapped. Patients die all the time. If you can't handle that, maybe this floor isn't for you. But it wasn't the death that got under Derek's skin. It was the stillness, the lack of protocol, the way no one, not a single person, had followed the rules that night. and how no one was willing to admit that was weird. The next clue came by accident. It was 3:13 a.m. Marcy had stepped out to check on a patient's meds. AJ was down the hall with restraints. Derek was alone at the main desk, flipping through the intake files from earlier that evening. A few folders in, he found one without a patient photo, just a name scribbled in red ink. Elias Ward. No diagnosis, no vitals, no admittance record. Just a single line. Transfer from Northfield unit. Staff instructed to avoid interaction. Observe only. No physical contact, no verbal engagement. The transfer date, 2 nights before the John Doe in room 213 died. Derek searched the digital system for Northfield. Nothing came up. He looked through archive transfers. Still nothing. So he took the file home. He shouldn't have, but something in his gut told him this wasn't just a missing record. It was scrubbed, deleted, on purpose. Back at his apartment, he scanned the file into his laptop and ran a basic search. That's when the name popped. Elias Ward, former psychiatrist, licensed in 2 states, practiced at Northfield Psychiatric Hospital for 11 years, fired for misconduct, then disappeared. Presumed dead after a patient uprising in 2014 that left 4 staffers injured. Except there was no obituary, no official report, just message boards and anonymous comments on nursing forums. Room 213 isn't a room, it's a sentence. Some floors carry ghosts. Ours wore a badge. They still don't say his name out loud. Not after what happened to Claire. Derek read every word, pieced together a history no one wanted to acknowledge. Elias had been brilliant, but also cruel, cold, known for experimental compliance techniques, meds, isolation, deprivation. The official records glossed it over as aggressive interventions. But the posts told another story. One nurse claimed he ran unauthorized sleep studies in the lower levels of Northfield. Another said patients left his care with flat affect, dissociation, and memory loss. A third post was just a sentence. He used to say, silence was the purest form of obedience. Derek didn't sleep again. Back at work, the pressure tightened. Marcy started watching him more closely. Tom avoided him entirely. AJ stopped talking altogether. And room 213? It wasn't empty anymore. On a Tuesday night, 2 weeks after the death, Derek passed by the room during rounds. The door was closed, but the light was on. And inside, for a fraction of a second, he saw a shadow move, a shape, and worse. He heard breathing, steady, measured, deliberate. He stepped back, heart racing. Hello? No answer. He keyed into the room. It was empty, no bed, no equipment, just 4 white walls, a table, and a single chair bolted to the floor. But the air was warm, lived in, and on the wall, in faint scratches he hadn't noticed before, someone had carved, "You saw me." That night he cornered Marcy. "What is this place?" Trembled slightly as she lit a cigarette. They were in the staff lounge, just the 2 of them. No cameras, no pretense. "You want the truth?" she said, exhaling slowly. "You won't sleep again if I tell you." Too late. She stared at the smoke curling up to the ceiling. He wasn't supposed to be transferred here, but the board owed someone a favor. Northfield was shutting down. They didn't want the press. He came with no ID, no file, just orders: isolate, observe, don't engage. "And you agreed to that?" "We didn't have a choice." Derek's voice broke. "But he died." "No," Marcy said quietly. "He didn't." And for the first time since Derek had met her, Marcy looked scared. "There's no code for him," she whispered, "because he's not a patient. He's something else now. I don't know what. I don't want to know. All I know is that every nurse who's tried to help him, talk to him, see him." She didn't finish. Derek didn't need her to, because he remembered something. The smile, that faint smug curve of the lips as Elias lay on the bed, supposedly dead. That wasn't death. That was recognition. Like he knew this would happen. Like he'd been waiting. For someone like Derek. For someone who still believed rules mattered. And now, he was watching. Again, Derek's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He sat in his car, parked just a block from the hospital, staring at the glow of the building through his windshield like it was some distant, untouchable thing. The snow was falling again, soft and quiet. as if the world didn't realize what he'd learned. He wanted to turn the key, drive home, quit, never go back. But that wasn't an option anymore. The moment he walked into room 213, the moment he read Elias Ward's file, this became more than just a job. He had seen too much, and someone knew it. The whisper started the next night, soft and barely there. At first, Derek thought it was the floor creaking, the vents, but then came the voice. His name, whispered low, like a breath against his ear. Derek. He spun. Nothing. Later, he found the word scratched into his locker. Derek. Over and over, as if someone had written it 100 times in a trance. He stopped sleeping altogether. Ate only when he remembered to. But still, he returned to work, because now, it wasn't just fear driving him. It was obsession. He needed to understand. Why was Elias here? Who was protecting him? And how many people had to pretend he didn't exist? The climax came on a stormy Friday, the kind of night that felt cursed before it even began. 2 patients coded on other floors. Staffing was short. Admin wasn't answering calls. Tom was gone. No explanation. That left Derek, Marcy and AJ, 3 people, 20 patients. The moment Derek stepped into the psych unit, something was wrong. Room 213's door was open. It had never been opened since the night of the first death. Derek had checked it every shift. Locked, untouched. Now it gaped, revealing the dim outline of the bolted chair and the silhouette of someone sitting in it. He moved toward the room, but Marcy blocked him. "Don't," she said, her voice tight. "He's not your patient." "I don't care," Derek snapped. "We can't keep pretending. He's not ours to fix." Derek shoved past her. Inside the room, the light flickered above the chair. Elias sat motionless, head tilted back, eyes wide open. He looked alive, more alive than before. Stronger, thicker somehow, like something had changed in him. Grown. His eyes followed Derek. "Still curious," Elias said softly, voice like gravel underwater. "You shouldn't be here." Elias smiled. "Neither should you." Derek backed out, heart pounding. He ran to the computer station, opened the patient logs. There it was, a new entry. Elias Ward reinstated. Under observational hold. No restrictions. No name signed. Just initials. TC Tom Caldwell. Derek's supervisor. The one who dodged every question. The one who hadn't shown up in 3 days. The betrayal hit like a punch. Tom knew. He'd always known. He'd brought Elias here, covered for him, protected him, and the staff had gone along with it because it was easier, because pushing back meant ending up like Claire or the others. He printed the file, all of it, every name, every death, every note, stuffed it into his coat and stormed back toward the ward. But room 213 was empty again. The chair spun slowly, like someone had just left. That's when the alarm rang. Code blue, East Wing, room 219. Derek ran. Marcy was already there. Compression started on a patient named Ray, schizophrenic, high risk but stable the night before. AJ was frozen in the doorway. "There's no pulse," Marcy gasped. Derek grabbed the crash cart, yanked open the drawer. But something was wrong. The epinephrine vials were gone. He looked at Marcy. She stared at the empty drawer, then at him. "No one did. I didn't." AJ muttered. She whispered. "We were supposed to do inventory." "You were supposed to," Marcy snapped. But Derek wasn't listening anymore. His eyes locked on the hallway camera feed above the station. For just a second, no more. Room 219's feed flickered, and in the corner, by the door, a figure stood, watching. White shirt, thin frame, hands clasped behind his back. Elias, just watching as another patient died. Derek abandoned the cart and sprinted back toward room 213. He had to end it. Do something. Shut it down. Call the police. Expose the whole thing. But the room was gone. The door had been replaced by a blank wall. No knob. No signage. Just paint. Like it had never existed. He turned back and froze. Elias stood at the end of the hallway. No smile now. Just calm. "You made it this far," he said. Derek's throat tightened. "You're not supposed to be here. I'm always here. You're killing people." Elias tilted his head. "I don't touch anyone. I don't move. I only observe." "Then how?" Elias took one slow step forward. "You think this place heals people. You think the meds help, You think the staff care. You've seen it. Derek stepped back. You're insane. Number, I'm honest. That's what makes me dangerous. You manipulate everyone. Marcy, Tom, they were already broken. I just helped them see it. Elias's eyes glittered. You're the one who still thinks he's good. That makes you interesting. He stopped walking. You want to fix the system, but the system isn't sick. The people are. Derek wanted to scream, fight, run. Instead, he collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the truth crashing into him. Every rule they broke, every protocol they ignored, every time they looked away. They let Elias live in the cracks. They created the space where he could exist. And now, he was part of the hospital. No longer a man, a symbol, a rot, a consequence. Just then, heavy boots echoed down the hallway. Security. 2 men in black approached. Blank faces, no urgency. Elias didn't move. One nodded at Derek. You're needed on the West Wing. Derek stared wide-eyed. He's not even supposed to be here. The taller guard gave him a slow look. He's not your concern anymore. Then, as if rehearsed, the guards flanked Elias and walked him quietly down the hall. Derek stood alone and realized what the betrayal really was. It wasn't Tom. It wasn't Marcy. It was everyone. The whole system. They knew, and they let it happen over and over again. Because pretending Elias Ward didn't exist was easier than admitting the truth. Derek didn't go home that morning. He sat in his car until the sun rose behind the hospital's silhouette, casting long shadows across the parking lot. His hands were cold. He hadn't even turned the engine on. The papers he'd printed were still on the passenger seat. Evidence of every unexplained death, every altered record. Every time Elias's name disappeared and reappeared from the system like a ghost no one wanted to admit was real. But now, the weight of it didn't feel like proof. It felt like warning, like one last desperate breath before the water closes in. When Derek finally walked into the hospital the next night, something was different. Tom was back, sitting at the front desk, typing like he'd never left, coffee in hand, wearing the same thin smile he always wore when he was about to lie. You're early, Tom said without looking up. Derek didn't respond. He looked around the unit. Quiet. Too quiet. Marcy was nowhere to be seen. Neither was AJ. The entire shift list had been shuffled. New faces, new staff, no explanations. Where's Marcy? Derek asked. Tom paused, then shrugged. She's on leave. She needed time off. And AJ? Transferred. Requested a different unit. Derek stared at him. They saw it too. Tom looked up at him now, not smiling. They saw what they needed to. For the next week, room 213 stayed sealed. No patient name on the door, no records in the system. Derek asked about it once, just once, and got a simple answer. That room is under maintenance. But every night, while walking the halls, he swore he heard footsteps in there. Not pacing, just shifting, like someone sitting still for too long, waiting for someone to notice. He tried to show the printed reports to a state auditor when she came for a surprise inspection. She smiled politely, promised to look into it. He never saw her again. Later that week, the printer logs were wiped. The copies were gone from his locker. All digital backups vanished. The system had swallowed the truth whole. The worst part? He started getting used to it. You would think a person can only watch so much before snapping. But Derek didn't snap. He slipped. Little things at first. Taking his breaks when patients were calling. Signing off early. Letting someone else answer the codes. Then one night, a man on 4B choked during dinner. Derek was feet away, but he hesitated. He thought, someone else will get it. Die with the same quiet detachment he'd once sworn he'd never feel. He knew then what Elias meant. Not in words, but in presence. You don't become evil overnight. You wear it, a little at a time, like a uniform that slowly fits better the longer you wear it. 2 months later, Derek passed Marcy at a gas station. She was standing beside a beat-up sedan, filling up, eyes sunken, hair unwashed. She looked up, recognized him, and froze. He waved. She didn't wave back, just got in the car and drove off like she'd seen a ghost. AJ never answered his texts. Tom acted like nothing had happened. No one talked about Elias. No one talked about Claire. It was like they never existed. Derek still showed up every shift, still walked the halls. But something in him had hollowed out. The hospital was a different place now, not because the building changed, but because he saw it clearly. The empty rooms, the silent dates, the falsified reports, none of it was an accident. It was engineered, and the people who kept it running weren't villains. They were cowards, tired, complicit, weak, just like him. On his last night at the hospital, Derek walked into room 213. The door was open again. No patient inside. Just a chair, a table, a file. Elias's file. It was empty. He sat in the chair, hands on his knees, heart pounding in the silence. And then he spoke, quiet, unsure who he was even talking to. "I don't want to become you." No answer came. Just the distant echo of a monitor beeping somewhere down the hall. Steady, indifferent, and somehow final. The last time Derek walked through the hospital's sliding doors, it felt like stepping out of a dream. A nightmare, really. But it was still hard to separate the two. The place loomed behind him, casting a long shadow across his back. And for a second, he wondered if he'd be back. He wasn't sure he could ever leave it behind, though. The hospital had done more than change him. It had become a part of him, like a scar he couldn't hide. The faces of the patients he'd failed, the empty halls that had swallowed so much, were burned into his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same thing. People on stretchers, eyes wide and pleading, but no one listening. He had told himself it wasn't his fault, but deep down, he knew better. He wasn't just a witness. He was part of the system that killed them. Months passed. Derek tried to move on, tried to go back to a normal life, one where he could sleep without waking up drenched in sweat, without hearing the faint beeping of a flatline echoing in his mind. But even in the quiet moments, when he was alone, the memory of room 213 never quite faded. He tried counseling, even though he felt like a fraud every time he walked into the therapist's office. What could he say? How could he explain that his biggest regret wasn't the things he'd done, but the things he hadn't done? That the real pain wasn't watching people die, but allowing them to die. He had walked away when he could have stayed. He had turned his back when he could have fought. That kind of guilt doesn't go away with time. It only grows. One rainy evening, Derek received a letter. The return address was unfamiliar. When he opened it, he recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Marcy's. She had written only a few short words. "I'm sorry. Don't let it consume you like it did me." At the bottom of the page, there was a phone number. He stared at it for a long time, his mind racing. Marcy had disappeared months ago. No one knew where she went. The hospital staff whispered that she'd left, but no one knew if she had taken a leave or quit. No one cared enough to ask. Derek considered calling. He wanted answers. He needed to understand why Marcy had left, why AJ had vanished, why Tom was still working, still untouched, when everyone else had paid a price. But deep down, he knew the truth. It didn't matter. They were all complicit. They always had been. They had all played their parts in something darker than they had ever realized. Some knew it, some didn't, but in the end, none of them were innocent. That night, Derek sat alone in his apartment, the city lights casting long shadows across the floor. He thought back to Elias, how calm he had been, how sure of himself, and then he thought about Tom, how easily he had slipped back into his role as the smiling manager, pretending that nothing had happened, pretending that everything could go back to normal. It sickened him, but more than that, it terrified him. Because what if he was just like that? What if, given the right circumstances, Derek too could become someone who chose to look the other way, someone who grew numb to the suffering around him, someone who convinced himself it wasn't his fault? The fear gnawed at him, sharper than any physical pain. What if he had already crossed a line he couldn't come back from? The phone rang, pulling Derek out of his thoughts. He didn't recognize it. Was a voice he hadn't heard in months. "Derek? It's Marcy." His heart skipped a beat. "I'm alive," she said, her voice breaking. "But I'm not okay." Derek could hear the tremor in her voice, the exhaustion. She sounded like someone who had been running for far too long. "I know," he said softly. "I don't think any of us are. Do you think we'll ever be able to fix this?" she asked. Derek paused. His fingers tightened around the phone. He glanced around at the empty apartment, at the silence that felt so loud. "No," he said finally. "I don't think we can fix it." There was a long silence between them. Neither of them knew how to fill the space, but somehow they both understood the weight of what had been left unsaid. Marcy's voice cracked again. "I should have done more. I should have stopped it before it got this bad." "We all should have," Derek replied. "Is there any way out?" she whispered. Derek closed his eyes. The question hung in the air between them, unanswered. "No," he said, his voice low and broken. "I don't think there is. Not for any of us." That night, Derek drove by the hospital one last time. It looked the same, silent, sterile, indifferent. But something in him had shifted. He no longer saw it as a place of healing or hope. It was a factory, a machine that chewed up everyone who entered, spit them out, and moved on to the next. And Derek? He had let it consume him. He didn't know what to do with the rest of his life. He didn't know if there was redemption for someone like him. But as he stared up at the looming hospital, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on him, Derek understood one thing. There would be no clean slate, no redemption. But maybe, just maybe, he could stop the cycle. The next morning, Derek walked into a small coffee shop and sat down at a corner booth. The sun was rising outside, casting a soft light through the windows. He pulled out a small notebook, the one he'd used when he'd first started at the hospital. He opened it, flipping through pages filled with notes, numbers, and names. It felt like a lifetime ago. But this time, instead of turning the page, he wrote something new, a promise to never look away again. And somehow, that felt like enough. The story ends not with answers, but with the quiet recognition that while some things cannot be undone, the truth will always find a way to surface. The consequences of betrayal linger, shaping lives, changing futures, and making it impossible to forget. And in the end, it's the choice of whether to face the truth that defines us, no matter how heavy the cost.